As we all know, farming and agriculture are one of the most essential industries in the world. And with the growing population, many researchers have looked into ways to cater to the world's needs. But for today's video, we'll be discussing the possibility of ditching intensive farming. But will it still feed the world upon doing so? Keep on watching today's video to find out more. Can we abandon intensive farming and feed the world at the same time? Innovation can close the gap between production and consumption, from urban farming to drones. To feed a population that is predicted to reach 10 billion by 2050, global food production must double in the ensuing 30 years. In 2050, an additional 7,400 ton calories will be required annually compared to 2010. If food production keeps growing at its current rate, it will take up an amount of land twice the size of India. According to a report released in December by the World Resources Institute on the food gap between present supply and rising consumption, the world's population will reach 9.8 billion people in 2050. In line with this, there's a need to find land and cultivate it. But is there any other option with the world's limited land mass? Increasing the amount of land used for agricultural production is one way to close this gap, but it cannot do so on its own. The loss of many of the planet's remaining forests, peatlands, and wild regions, as well as the release of the carbon they store, would exacerbate climate change if that much land could be found in adequate conditions. Globally, intensive farming has already had a significant impact on the environment and biodiversity. Pesticides have increased the output of cereal and fruit, but they have also killed a variety of insects, including bees, in significant numbers. By 2050, food production must increase by 50% to feed the world's expanding population. Fertilizers have improved deficient soils, but also had unforeseen negative effects. The Gulf of Mexico's largest ever maritime dead zone was found there last year as a result of fertilizer and livestock excrement pouring off the land. Chemical fertilizers produce ammonia, an atmospheric pollutant, and the greenhouse gas nitrous oxide, which contributes directly to climate change. But what are our options for this? This year, transformative change in our food systems has been requested by the UN Food and Agricultural Organization, the foremost organization in the world responsible for safeguarding our future food supply. In the industrialized world, organic farming is the most obvious substitute for industrialized intensive farming. Although the term organic or bio is commonly used in supermarkets, it accounts for barely 2% of food sales in the UK and 5.5% in the US. Farmers who practice organic farming are required to abide by specific guidelines for the care of their animals and crops. These include only administering antibiotics to animals when absolutely necessary, switching almost entirely from chemical fertilizers and pesticides to natural substitutes like manure and wood ash as fertilizers, and plant-derived pesticides as pesticides, and managing land to create habitat for wildlife. If consumption patterns are changed to encourage people who can afford it to eat less meat, according to Rob Percival, head of policy at the Soil Foundation, organic farming can feed the world. To prevent the worst effects of climate change, he claims that we urgently need to change both our production and consumption patterns. This includes changing our diets to include less and better meat. Livestock grazing on pasture can support soil health and carbon sequestration, and manure can provide soil fertility for other crops, Percival also noted. He continues, and when the environmental and other damage caused by high energy and chemical inputs in non-organic farming are factored in, organic food is cheaper for society and better for the planet. Organic farming has higher productivity than previously believed. But isn't organic farming a harder alternative for our farmers? There are alternatives to transition to more sustainable farming without obtaining organic certification. Even for farmers for whom the cost and time required to satisfy organic requirements may be prohibitive. A wide variety of farming methods that aim to lessen agricultural's negative effects on the environment are together referred to as agroecology. Although it is informal and exempt from certification and inspection, it includes organic farming. It's about harnessing natural systems, according to Vicky Hurd, a food and farming activist at the NGO Sustain. It includes reducing the usage of synthetic chemicals like pesticides and fertilizers. feeding the soil, paying strict attention to the soil's conditions, and accounting for the natural insect predator and crop cycles. She contends that agroecology, rather than destructive industrial farming, might be widely adopted. Farmers can rotate crops, including vegetables like legumes that fix nitrogen and sow crops like clover as cover to stifle weeds and organic matter to the soil. Rather than using the traditional agricultural method of planting cash crops, it necessitates close attention to the land itself and the crops at the highest yield possible. According to Hurd, diversity is the key. These massive monocultures can harm biodiversity since they are difficult to manage naturally. It can also be advantageous to diversify into heritage crops, such as older kinds of fruit and vegetables and grains other than the few strains of wheat that are currently the norm in intensive agriculture. These plants have their unique benefits, such as innate resistance to specific maladies, pests, or circumstances. Hurd acknowledges that while you can have a smaller yield with these techniques, the food you produce has a better concentration of nutrients. And what about permaculture? Some farmers take it a step further and adopt ideas like permaculture and biodynamics. Understanding how plants interact with one another and combining them are key permaculture ideas. Waste materials are also reused, frequently as fertilizer. A distinct approach is taken by biodynamics, which incorporates a spiritual element while adhering to Rudolf Steiner's teachings. For instance, in some circumstances, planting and harvesting are coordinated with lunar calendars. Paludiculture is another organic management method for peatlands, which have suffered severe degradation throughout the world. Re-wetting dried out peatlands are necessary for this, as is looking for alternative plants that thrive there, such as sphagnum moss and other forestry, and medicinal species, as well as allowing animals to graze. Aside from permaculture, how about urban planning? Is that not a viable option too? Urban farming can effectively bring food, or at least some fresh produce, to dense populations without the nutrient loss and greenhouse gas emissions associated with long-distance transportation. Already, a fifth of the world's food is produced by urban gardening. In London alone, there are already more than 3,000 urban agricultural initiatives. These have been echoes of the Victorian era's market gardens and dairies, when cows were housed in green spaces in cities for fresh milk, and small vegetable farms were located in or close to towns. Up to the start of World War I, Londoners can buy fresh milk from the Hyde Park cows. Soon, watch out for hipsters sipping smoothies made on Shoreditch's underground farms. These choices seem a bit specialized. Aren't the majority of the food produced on industrial farms? No. There are more than 570 million farms around the globe, and more than 90% of them are owned by individuals or families, and mostly employ their own members. Around 80% of the world's food is produced by them. Ronald Vargas, a soil and land officer for the FAO, believes that small farmers will be crucial to the shift. The FAO views investments in smallholder production as the most urgent, secure, and promising means of combating hunger and malnutrition, while minimizing the ecological impact of agriculture, even though many small farmers are impoverished and insecure. So how can technology and innovation help us with our agricultural problems? Technology and innovation exist to assist industrial farmers and small holdings increase productivity and yields. Instead of blanket spraying farmland, farmers may target specific regions with fertilizer, insecticides, and water by using GPS, drones, and fine-grained data on topography, soils, and other features of farming. For example, Olam, a multinational agribusiness that cultivates cocoa, coffee, sugar, cotton, and other crops, employs real-time monitoring of its fields to precisely evaluate the quantities of fertilizer and prevent the need to use pesticides in advance. Sensors are installed in its almond trees in Australia to track precisely how much water each tree requires and when. Mobile phones are revolutionizing what is possible for family farmers in underdeveloped nations. They have made resources like weather forecasts, market pricing, production data, and practical guidance available to farmers in isolated places. They can follow their produce once it leaves the farm thanks to GPS. Although they may appear future, drones and robots are currently in use to apply targeted herbicides and identify damaged or ill crops before they may spread to nearby farms. Vertical farming is becoming more popular in areas of the world where land is at a premium. This is the method of layering crops, typically vegetables, in shallow pots to whatever possible height. Because water can be pumped to the top and let fall naturally, it can be regulated to use water and energy more effectively in addition to saving space. Some methods substitute hydroponics, in which plants are submerged in mineral-rich water for soil. Temperatures can be precisely managed, and water and nutrients can be recycled. Both the distribution techniques and the health of the plants can be managed by software systems. And that wraps up today's video on whether we can forego intensive farming. Hopefully you learned a lot in today's video. Do you have any other ideas that could help feed the world's hunger problem? Let us know in the comments section below. Thanks for watching today's video, and before you go, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to our channel with the notification bell on for more videos like this. We'll see you again next time.